Good morning, hello, and welcome. I have here with me Martin Meyer. Martin is the expert for digitization at ZETA. And Martin, it's a real pleasure to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for the invitation, Sushant. It's a pleasure.
Martin, we start off with something interesting and unique you brought for us. What is it?
Okay. Yeah, I brought with me an old calculator, which was the property of my father. He was a teacher and he used this and bought this in the 70s. By then, this was about the same amount of money that you can afford for a laptop today.
Wow.
And it was kind of, maybe not cutting edge, but good standard of digitalization in the 70s.
It's an HP. I'm going to be very careful with it because it's probably very valuable. I have also with me a tablet here, and it just shows how the technology changes and evolves over time. It's quite impressive to see what was considered state of the art then and what is now state of the art.
Yeah, that changed quite a bit.
Which actually brings me to your background, Martin. And can you talk a little bit about your background and how did you get into the space of digitization?
Okay. Yeah, well, I'm an industrial engineer by education. So I studied mechanical engineering and business in the 90s. And that time there was quite a large number of students at my university. So I made up my mind to do a little bit different than the others, to have a little bit of a diversification. And I moved to the Montano Universität in Leoben to do my thesis. And at this time, I came into the topic of modeling material flows in industry. And we were using software and computer to simulate how the material flows are going on. And by then, we knew how these things happen. And then industry customers asked us to analyze their business and their production processes. And so this involved that after my studies, I started up a small company in the field of material flow analysis and simulation. And one day we then received real data from the customer and tried to map how this works out and do some root cause analysis. And by that, somehow the computer became one of my best friends. And we kept on collaborating and doing mathematical analytics, basically in chemical and pulp and paper industry. And I can recall one day when we had this model showing the problems of this specific process, a customer said, well, now you know how our problem is behaving. Why don't you control upon that model and get it out of the way? And this is when we started to dig into the machine learning and online optimization. It was in the mid of the 2010 years. And then I moved on a little bit more to the software development. And by that, also the topics of digitalization and digital business models came into view.
And how did the transition happen to pharmaceuticals? Because you have some experience there and it's a very interesting field. How did you enter that space and what has your experience been?
Yeah, it was I think it was in 2010 when I got a call from the Technical University in Graz. They were aiming for a EU-funded project, and they had the idea on simulating a complicated pharmaceutical process and then using this model also for controlling it. And this was the first touch point with pharma industry, and I liked it. It was different to chemical and pulp and paper. And by that, I thought it could make sense to differentiating into that industry. And since 2010, I'm now more or less in the pharma environment.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because traditionally it's been a conservative industry, and yet you're in a field that's very progressive and fast moving and technology based.
Yeah.
And so that brings me to ZETA and how what was your contact like and how you built the relationship and how you ended up here.
Mm-hmm. Why did I end up at ZETA? Well, I was working at the Styrian software company, and somehow when you're in the same range, you somehow meet each other when you're in the same industry. And I had ZETA on my radar because it was quickly evolving from a pipe fitter to a larger company with a lot of engineering expertise. And this is why I was in contact with ZETA already years before I definitely ended up here. The final step was a little bit planned accident, I would say. I was working in Germany at a global supplier for laboratory equipment in the pharma industry. And I was responsible for the digitalization strategies there. And due to my family constraints, I wanted to move back to Austria. And at this time, I gave our board a call and said, well, if you're interested, I want to come back and maybe there are some things going on. And what I didn't know that time is that ZETA had a very strong background in trying to optimize their engineering and manufacturing workflows. So all from feasibility study or detail engineering to automation and E&IC topics to fabrication. There was an initiative already years ago to try to cover it with software. And when I gave this call 2 years ago, they said, well, we just restarted, we introduced a new software landscape, and we think it makes sense. If you have a look at it, maybe we can also create new business models. And this was extremely interesting to me. And this is how I ended up here.
Yeah, and I think the timing was also very interesting because ZETA has kind of evolved over the last 10 years, and we're at a very, an inflection point in terms of growth and where we can take the company and the business. And your timing and, the time at which you've joined us is also interesting for both you and the company. So I wanted to understand a bit more about the digitization initiative at ZETA. What was the genesis for that? And can you talk a little bit about the initiative itself?
Yeah.
What are we trying to do?
As I've learned, roughly almost 10 years ago, there was the idea to get one step ahead and to be more efficient and to allow for data entry only once. And the idea that time was to wrap it around an ERP system. The focus was in the ERP system, there was a lot of information for fabrication, like all the quality topics, incoming quality checks and stuff. And so the first initiative was to wrap around this software core, the solution, which ended up in some places as a success. In other places, we came across the constraints. Over the years, then some islands of software were created, some for 3D design, for P&ID drawings. And it was in 2017-18 when we had so big projects to handle, where we realized that these non-connected tools didn't really support our idea for boosting efficiency. And that time, the board decided to have a look on different landscapes of tool chains. And that time we decided for changing our entire engineering tool chain. So it followed like the idea of an ERP system. All the business workflows are covered, at least if it's a larger company, they're covered in an ERP system. And so we were looking for a system that allows for all the engineering workflows covered in a system. And you can't buy it out of a box. Mm. So we were looking for an environment that allowed to further develop, that allowed to introduce content, because the tool is one thing, but if our colleagues want to work, they need catalogs to start working from. You don't reinvent everything from scratch. And so we ended up with this initiative, and exactly the timing when I came in, there was this vision of our board saying, well, why not offer that on the market? If we know how to do integrated engineering, why not offer that on the market? And it was just a rough idea at that time, and this is what we developed over the last 2 years. How could we offer our internal competence also to the market?
So clearly what you're trying to say is that internally at ZETA, it helped us improve our efficiency, our processes, and the way we execute projects.
Yeah.
But what implications would something like this have for customers? How would it impact customers and their businesses?
Well, internally we realized that, as you said, efficiency is boosted, but this central data hub also allows for executing projects quicker. Not necessarily because the tool as such speeds up, but you can work differently. You can parallelize workflows. You can be a lot more efficient in change management topics. You have less errors. You have to rework. And by that, we realized that this tool is a boost for internal efficiency, but also, if you look towards our customers, has a huge impact on the projects as such. And when we had an eye on that, then we realized the fourth really, really interesting topic is that we create a comprehensive digital harmonized data set around the project, which you would call a digital twin. And so we realized that when you engineer the way we do, at the end, before the plant is even built, you have every digital data available, and you can further use that data for any Industry 4.0 project. So if you want to go towards augmented reality applications during operations phase, if you want to go to virtual reality for training, everything is there. It's harmonized, it's there. And this is also a value add for our customers.
So you spoke about digital twin, and you hear this word or this phrase a lot. Can you explain for someone who doesn't have a background what this means? And also, is the digital twin only on the manufacturing side, or how would it kind of run through for a pharmaceutical company? What would it mean?
2 years ago, I didn't like the phrase digital twin too much. Everybody was talking about it, but it was something like the Bigfoot, you know? Everybody was talking about the Bigfoot, but nobody had seen it exactly. So we made up our mind how could we bring some light into that. And, you know, in our industry, at the end, we are there to serve the customer or the patient at the end. Our patients are the ones that need some support. So if you think about the patient that needs a specific treatment for his problems, you are trying to find a product that is capable of treating that product, or curing that problem. And you need a specific process that is able to deliver a stable product. And at the end, you need an industrial scale plant that is able to host the process, that is able to deliver the product to supply the patients. So we have these 4 Ps. And if you now think about a digital representation of a patient, for example, through his genome or through his metabolic fluxes, this is kind of the digital twin of the patient. And then you can think about a digital representation of the product by its key parameters, its quality attributes, by its structure. And then this is the digital twin of the product. There is a digital twin of the process where you think about simulation, about all the control topics, about the units and the equipments and the recipes. And there is a digital twin of the plant, which is represented by, of course, the 3D view of it, by the equipment, by spare part numbers or whatever. And so this is the way we think that it makes sense to cutting a digital twin into these 4 domains. And if you do so, we are more or less delivering a digital twin of the plant and of the process by our integrated engineering.
So the twin can actually serve both the product and the patient, but our focus is more on the process and the plant side.
Currently, our focus is on the process and on the plant side. There are some initiatives going on to get a step ahead with how to combine the digital twin of the product, which also is represented by a bioprocess model, with the process as such. So there are ongoing activities. But currently we focus on the digital twin of the process and of the plant. Yeah.
And so you had mentioned something about for the customers, the implication. When we're doing a project and we have a digital twin, does it impact the time for the customer? Like you had said, you can save some time. So does it mean we save time executing the project, but also then the customer has the benefit of the time for their
I can give an example. So we were able to conclude a project this March. It was a 100 million plus project in Vienna. And it was a very unique project because we just had 24 months for execution time, which is definitely more or less 50%, half of the time of the lead time you usually have. And this was the first huge project where we really were applying this new digital way of engineering from end to end. And there a lot of benefits showed up creating these digital twins and also reusing it. For example, when we in collaboration and co-creation with the customer, we of course use the digital twin of the plant, the 3D models, to discuss with the customer whether the design that we finally end up with is according his needs, like maintainability, usability. And so they are really 2 or more guys on different places. They work on the same 3D model. They put in their comments, they draw lines. And based on this, the change is done. The change in terms of the planning is reworked and stuff like that. So we use a digital twin of these 3D models. Like you maybe know when you build a new kitchen, yeah? You get a plan and you definitely know how it will look like before you even get it. And you can think about, well, I don't like this, I don't like that. So this is also the way that we can offer. When we are now into commissioning phase, where I say, oh, you're almost at the end and the customer has to learn how to run that plant, how to operate it, we're using large shares of these data to train people, to educate people, but also to think about maintenance, because we have all the P&IDs, all the locations, all the spare parts, it's all available. And this is why we developed a mobile version, a mobile companion, you could say, for the maintenance guys. They can take it with them, and it keeps all the information about what is to do, where to go, at which floor. Just imagine 7-floor high buildings, 10,000s of things to do in maintenance. So he's guided, he or she is guided. There is information about manuals, about where to go, P&IDs and stuff. So we exploit this digital twin always on specific use cases.
So, I mean, given the last year which we've experienced, we've actually the world has managed to bring a vaccine, which normally takes 6 to 8 years or up to 10 years within 1 year. And so any amount of time that we save for the customer directly translates to the drug coming to the market sooner. But I want to ask you the flip side. So what do you see are the challenges typically? Because we do exist in a conservative industry and there could be some form of resistance. So what do you see the challenges? What have you encountered in your experience?
Well, I think the main problem or the main challenge is that change is something where we as humans are not always happy with. This is something that comes along with my entire career, because in most cases I was on the innovative side. And
you changed a lot.
Yeah, I tried, and there was resistance. And actually, up to today, I didn't really find out what triggers that we want to have new things, like with smartphones and applications and whatever, and what triggers that we want to stick to what we know. And the more you come to commercial topics, I sense that sticking to what you know is on the favorite side. The more you go to your private life, maybe change is a little bit easier. So what I see is that change is the challenge, it's not technology. Technology is there. It might not be perfect in all the ways, but it's change. And the easier you can adapt to change or you can implement change at customers is when they really see a value add. And this is where I would say that the challenge is that we as technicians, we change our mind and don't start with, hey, I can do this, apply this technology or that, but think about what's really the value add for our colleagues in maintenance, for our colleagues in operations, or our colleagues in the management. And if we know what would help them to have a better life during their work, then we should focus, because the technology to realize these things is there.
Yeah, that's well said, actually. That's a very powerful message. And you spoke about your vision. So I want to ask you, what would be your vision like for the industry as a whole, for digitization?
My vision for the industry as whole is really to having this big picture applied and to use the available technology in the way that is there. Meaning that starting with the experts in development, reusing that know-how for scaling, reusing that know-how for running the plant. And digitalization is just the glue. It's just the facilitator. But this new thinking over these many years that it still will take, maybe we don't fall back to 15 years of development time or 10 years, but it will still be years. And there somebody has to have the vision on the customer side to say, yeah, I want to get all the digitized know-how from development to scaling and to to commercial production. So this and being a little Lego brick in this big picture. This is my vision. Yeah.
So we are approaching the end of the conversation. I wanted to ask you, what would be, if you want to leave people who are watching this with one key message or one key thought, what would that be?
My key message would be think about the value add and not about technology. Elaborate what would change the way your colleagues, your customers would work from tomorrow onwards, and rely on that the technology is available to realize it. I think we are still on the other side. We are so fascinated by new technologies, and we just see that, and in many cases we miss whether there is a value add for the users or not.
So what you're saying is start from what you really need.
Exactly. Start from your needs and rely on technology. It will be there. And this is a fantastic time. 20 years ago, we had to create new technology to facilitate solutions. In most cases today, it's the other way around.
Yeah, who knows what a calculator 30 years from now will look like.
Exactly, you're right, yeah. Maybe, I can't imagine. Nobody would have had the idea that this would change into that.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Martin, for your time. Would you also be open to answering some personal questions, some questions about your...
Yeah, go ahead.
So Martin, we would like to know more about you. Are you a coffee person or a tea guy?
Coffee in the morning, tea in the afternoon.
What's the first thing you are doing in the morning?
Wake up my kids.
What's on your work desk right now?
2 computer mouses, 1 keyboard, and a headset.
You're 21 again.
Cool. Fantastic.
Are you a cat or a dog person?
A cat person.
The biggest distraction in your workday?
Lunchtime.
What's your spirit animal?
My spirit animal. An eagle?
Okay. You are a market developer for smart engineering services at ZETA. Describe smart engineering services in 15 words or less.
New, digital, efficient, and applicable in the industry.
Great. Are you using Android or iPhone?
iPhone.
And your favorite off-duty activity is?
Riding my race bike.
Thank you, Martin.
Thank you.
Thank you again for your time. If you want to meet more ZETA experts, please check out our next interview right now.